bring diversity to our portfolio, and that is going to help protect us from changes in the future. But we still have a long way to go. We've got a lot of coal out there, and the reason we use coal is because, number one, it's the lowest cost, and number two, it's reliable. It's there when you need it. If you take coal, for instance, the fuel cost on coal is about, well, it's less than a penny per kilowatt hour, and I'll explain how I get that in a moment. You add some operations and maintenance and some local costs, and our variable cost to produce one more or one less kilowatt hour is about 1.5 cents per kilowatt hour. Might also be considered our avoided cost. Generator is the expensive part. You're talking 3.5 to 4 cents a kilowatt hour to build a coal plant. Transmission is only 6/10 of a cent per kilowatt hour. Now this is the tail wagging the dog. It's only 6/10 of a cent per kilowatt hour, less than 10% of the retail cost. The transmission determines when, where, and if you can build generation. If you don't have transmission, you don't build generation. Then you get out to where the hard work is done. Folks like Capital Electric or Renewable Electric, they're out there in that snow, sleet, dark at night, building those lines, keeping them up in the blizzards and the ice storms. And Morgan Grand Sioux particularly had something like 25,000 poles taken down in an ice storm. And when they scrambled, they got out there and trying to erect 25,000 new poles in the middle of the mud. That's not an easy job. I'm sitting in my nice warm office on those days. They're out there in the snow and the sleet building these things. You add that all up, you come up with 8 to 9 cents a kilowatt hour. That 8 to 9 cents is probably typical across the state. There are probably some co-ops that are even lower than that. The key thing here is that to provide that firm power supply, when you get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, turn on the light switch, it goes on, whether the wind's blowing or not. This is the base resource that's out there, and it's the resource that wind has to compete against. If you bring in an intermittent resource around, now the correct term, or politically correct term, is variable resource. I'm not supposed to use intermittent anymore. You displace the fuel. When the wind blows, you back down a generator somewhere. And when the wind doesn't blow, you wrap that generator back up. So during that time, you save fuel. Wind is a fuel displacer. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But one of the things that I get is people put up a small wind turbine, and their first question to me is, how come you don't pay me the 8 cents and I'm paying the co-op? Well, the reason for that is that 8 cents represents a bundled rate. And if you look at that bundled rate, it includes the fuel, but it includes the generator, the reserves, the operations and maintenance, all those things that don't go away when you put power on the line. And the fuel is really what's being displaced. So maybe the simple way to look at this is that over half of the power supply, of half of your rate that you pay is wires. It's not the electricity, it's not the power plant. It's the wires part of it, and that's half of that 8 cents. And that's somewhat of our rationale for paying power that gets put on the line from small generators. We pay roughly 4 cents a kilowatt hour, roughly half station. If you have to build a substation, that's going to cost you another $2 to $4 million, depending on what voltage you're at. From that, then you match the wind regime. Do you have wind in that area? You know, North Dakota is pretty hard not to find a windy spot, but there are some that are better than others. Number 3, and this is very important, this is where a lot of risk lies in a wind project. You have to avoid environmentally sensitive areas. Don't even start if you're in an environmentally sensitive area. You've got to make sure that you avoid these areas because you're trying to do an environmentally proper generation. You don't want to come in and do an unacceptable environmental impact. And then culturally sensitive areas. And this is something that we've had to be very sensitive to at our project down in South Dakota. It turns out that the area that we're building this was kind of it was a common area. There were over 14 tribes, Native American tribes, that had used this area historically in the past. And with a project that involves a federal nexus, you have to do a Section 106 consultation. And with that, we identified a lot of cultural resources. We were able to avoid all of them. We didn't want to be just driving roads and turbines on top of these, so we identified a lot of sites. We had archaeological teams out there, and we avoided all these sites. But it's something you want to be careful about, and just be prepared for that.